The rain pounded against the windows, a steady rhythm that echoed through the small, cramped apartment. Inside, the only warmth came from the dim light of a single lamp, casting shadows across the worn furniture. In the corner, a toddler, barely 2 years old, slept peacefully in a makeshift crib made of old boxes. Her mother, Lisa, sat at the kitchen table, her head buried in her hands. The weight of the world pressed down on her shoulders as she stared at the pile of bills in front of her, each one more threatening than the last. She didn't know where to start. The rent was overdue by months. Her electricity bill had been cut off again, and she could hear the hum of the generator in the background, keeping the lights flickering on in desperate bursts. The only sound besides the rain was the occasional wail of her baby, who stirred in her sleep, oblivious to the growing storm outside. Lisa took a deep breath and tried to steady her shaking hands. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered, the words barely audible above the rain. Her mind was racing, consumed by thoughts of failure, of falling short, of not being able to provide the way she always promised herself she would. She had always been proud of the life she had built for herself and her daughter. At 23, she had found herself pregnant, living in a small, rundown neighborhood, but she had a job at a local diner and hoped she could build a better life for them both. But then came the layoffs. The pandemic hit, and just like millions of others, she was left without a job. And without a job came the inevitable struggle to pay the rent, buy groceries, and keep the roof over their heads. What had once been a small, stable life was now slipping through her fingers like sand, and she could do nothing to stop it. But this wasn't just about her. Lisa's daughter, Mariah, was a constant reminder of why she kept fighting. The baby's small hands, her wide eyes full of wonder, and her innocent smile that lit up Lisa's world, even in the darkest times. Mariah had a future ahead of her, and Lisa promised herself that no matter what happened, she would fight to give her that future. Yet here she was, sitting in a dark apartment with a mountain of unpaid bills and no clear way out. She had tried everything, applying for job after job, taking on odd tasks for extra cash, even selling things she held dear. She had reached out to friends and family for help, but everyone had their own struggles, and no one could offer much more than empty promises. Now, the eviction notice sitting in front of her felt like the final blow. It was the one thing she couldn't ignore, the one thing that felt like it was too big to overcome. The tears that had been threatening to spill for days finally broke free, running down her face. She wiped them away quickly, not wanting Mariah to wake up and see her mother in this state, but it was hard to stop. The fear of losing everything, the apartment, the stability, the only home Mariah had ever known, was too much to bear. There was nothing she could do to stop the inevitable now. The weight of it all felt crushing. Lisa stood up and walked to the window, staring out into the pouring rain. The world felt like it was closing in on her. She had no backup plan, no safety net. No one could save her. But as she stood there, lost in thought, a sudden knock on the door broke her from her reverie. She froze. Who could that be at this hour? She glanced nervously at Mariah, who was still asleep, and then made her way to the door. Her heart raced with a mixture of curiosity and dread. Maybe it was the landlord, here to add insult to injury. Maybe someone else with another bill she couldn't pay. She opened the door slowly. There stood a man, tall, well-dressed, and with a presence that seemed almost out of place in her rundown apartment building. He was holding an envelope in his hand, his gaze calm and steady. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Lisa stood in the doorway, unsure of what to make of the situation. The man's appearance was unexpected, to say the least, but there was something about his calm demeanor that made her feel both intrigued and wary. "Are you Lisa?" he asked, his voice smooth but direct. "Yes, I am. Can I help you?" she replied, trying to mask the uncertainty in her voice. "I have something for you," he said, offering the envelope. Lisa's gaze shifted between the envelope and the stranger's face. "Who are you?" she asked, her mind racing. She wasn't expecting anyone. let alone someone who looked so out of place. The man smiled slightly, as if he knew exactly what she was thinking. My name is Marcus. I've been following your situation for a while. Lisa's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. Following? How do you? I know this is strange, he interrupted gently, but I think I might be able to help you. His eyes met hers, and in that moment, something shifted in the air between them. It wasn't just the promise of financial relief, but something deeper, a sense of understanding, as if he truly saw her struggle, her fight. Lisa hesitated. There was something about his tone that seemed sincere, but at the same time, the whole situation felt surreal. How could this man possibly know about her situation? Who was he? And why was he here? What do you mean, help? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He handed her the envelope, and she took it, her fingers trembling. I've heard your story, Lisa. I know what you've been going through, and I want to help you out of it. All of it. She stared at the envelope for a long moment, unsure of what to say. The last time someone had offered her help, it was a loan she couldn't repay. She had turned it down. She couldn't bring herself to take money from someone she didn't know. But this felt different. How do you know about me? Lisa asked again, her curiosity growing despite her reservations. Marcus's expression softened. I've seen your story on the news. I've heard about the struggles you've been facing. The bills, the eviction notice. I know it's hard, Lisa. Believe me, I do. Lisa was silent for a moment, processing his words. She had never been one to ask for help, let alone accept it from a stranger. But something in Marcus's eyes made her believe that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't offering pity. There was something more to this, a genuine desire to make a difference in her life. Why me? She finally asked, her voice cracking slightly. Why do you care? Marcus smiled again, this time with a warmth that made her feel like he was more than just a stranger on her doorstep. Because I know what it's like to be at the bottom, to feel like there's nowhere to turn. And I want to offer you a way out. I'm offering you a fresh start. Lisa felt a lump form in her throat. This man, a total stranger, was offering her something she couldn't even begin to comprehend. But there was a catch. She knew it. There always was. What's the catch? She asked, her voice quiet but firm. Marcus looked at her for a moment, considering his words carefully. I can erase all your debt. I'll take care of everything. But there's one thing I ask in return. Lisa's heart raced. Could it be true? Was he really offering to wipe out everything she owed? Rent, bills, medical expenses. She had no idea who he was or why he would want to help her, but she couldn't deny the hope rising in her chest. What do you want? She asked cautiously. He stepped back slightly, as if preparing to leave, but his gaze never left hers. I just need you to do one thing when you're able. Help someone else who is struggling, just like you. Lisa's eyes widened, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. It was a simple request, but one that felt powerful. Could this man really change her life? And more importantly, could she help someone else the way he was offering to help her? I'll think about it, she said, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. Marcus nodded, as if he understood. Take your time. But know this, sometimes the hardest part is asking for help, and the best thing you can do is pay it forward. With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Lisa standing at the door, holding the envelope that held the key to a new beginning. Lisa stood in the doorway, the envelope still in her trembling hands. She watched as Marcus disappeared down the hall, his footsteps gradually fading away until they were nothing more than an echo in her mind. The door creaked softly as she closed it behind her, locking out the storm, but leaving her with a whirlwind of thoughts that threatened to overwhelm her. The weight of the envelope in her hand felt heavier with each passing second. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Almost midnight. The house was silent, save for the soft sound of Mariah's breathing from the bedroom. Her daughter was sound asleep, unaware of the turmoil that swirled around her mother. Lisa walked to the small dining table, pulling out the chair and sitting down. The lamp beside her flickered, casting a warm but dim glow on the papers that surrounded her. Bills. Notices of overdue rent, electricity, credit card payments. A reminder of everything she couldn't keep up with. Every piece of paper felt like a weight on her shoulders, each one adding to the pressure that already made it hard to breathe. She had been on the edge of despair for so long, always hoping for a break that never came. And then Marcus showed up, out of nowhere. A stranger, offering something so unreal it almost felt like a dream. He had promised to pay off everything, every last cent of her debt. The eviction notice would be gone, the phone calls from creditors would stop, and the fear of losing everything would fade. It was too good to be true, and yet here she was, holding the evidence in her hands. But with the promise came a condition, a single request. Help someone else when you're able. The simplicity of the request wasn't what stopped Lisa from jumping at the offer. It was the weight of it. How could she accept help from a stranger, someone who was practically offering her a new life, without understanding why? What was his motive? She knew people didn't just offer help without expecting something in return. But Marcus had made it clear, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about getting anything back. It was about giving, about passing on the kindness that she, too, could one day provide for someone else. But could she? Could she truly be that person, the one who paid it forward? Could she trust Marcus enough to take such a huge leap? She sat there, lost in thought, for what seemed like hours. Her mind bounced between the possibility of a fresh start and the uncertainty of what Marcus's offer really meant. Was it a trap? What if accepting his help meant getting tangled in something she didn't understand? And yet, the idea of being free from this constant battle with bills and debt, of giving her daughter a life that wasn't weighed down by uncertainty, was almost too enticing to resist. But there was something deeper inside Lisa, a voice that told her that this was more than just a financial offer. This was about her own transformation. It was about reclaiming her life, her dignity, and her future. And somewhere in the back of her mind, the thought of helping someone else, just as Marcus had helped her, began to take root. The idea felt both foreign and liberating. It was a decision that she knew she couldn't make alone. She needed someone to talk to, someone who could help her see the bigger picture. With a sigh, Lisa picked up her phone and dialed her best friend Karen. Karen had been there through the rough patches, the sleepless nights, the days when Lisa had wondered if she could ever catch a break. She had always been Lisa's sounding board, the one person who knew how much she loved her daughter and how hard she fought to keep them both afloat. The phone rang 3 times before Karen picked up. "Hello." Karen's voice was groggy, still heavy with sleep. "Hey, Karen," Lisa said softly. "I need to talk. It's urgent." Karen's tone shifted immediately, concern creeping into her voice. "Lisa? What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "I'm not sure. Something strange happened tonight." There was a pause on the other end of the line. What happened? Lisa took a deep breath before explaining everything. How Marcus had shown up at her door, how he knew about her situation, how he had offered to erase all her debt. She told Karen about the envelope and the one condition. She had to help someone else when she was able. When she finished, there was silence for a moment. "Are you serious?" Karen's voice was a mix of disbelief and awe. "A stranger just shows up and offers to pay off your debt. That's insane. But it sounds like a dream." Lisa nodded, even though Karen couldn't see her. "I don't know if I can trust him. It feels too easy. Too good to be true." Karen paused again, this time more thoughtful. "I get it. But look, you've been struggling for so long, Lisa, and now someone is offering you a way out, a real chance to start over. You have to think about what it could mean for you and Mariah. You deserve to have a chance at a fresh start." Lisa felt a knot form in her stomach. "I know, but what if he's asking for something I don't understand? What if there's more to it than I'm seeing?" "It's not just about the money, Karen. It's about what comes after." "I get that," Karen replied. "But what if it's not about some hidden agenda? What if he's just genuinely trying to help? I think the bigger question is, what will you do with that help? Lisa let Karen's words settle in her mind. She could feel the weight of them. It wasn't just about accepting Marcus's offer. It was about what she would do with it afterward. The idea of paying it forward, helping someone else, was both overwhelming and empowering. But what if she wasn't ready? What if she wasn't strong enough to take on such a responsibility? I don't know if I can be the person he thinks I can be, Lisa said quietly. I don't know if I have the strength to help someone else. I'm barely holding it together as it is. You've always been strong, Lisa, Karen said gently. Maybe it's time to realize that you've been strong for yourself all along. Maybe this is your chance to prove to yourself that you can handle more than you think. Lisa was silent, letting Karen's words sink in. It was true. She had always been a fighter, a survivor. She had clawed her way through the darkest times of her life, holding on to the hope that things would get better. And maybe now, with Marcus's help, it could. But was she ready to make that leap? To accept that help and transform not only her own life, but the lives of others? She looked over at the bedroom door, where Mariah was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the turmoil that had consumed her mother's thoughts for hours. Lisa knew that whatever decision she made, it would have a profound impact on her daughter's future. She couldn't keep going in circles, afraid to take the step that might change everything. With newfound resolve, Lisa stood up and walked to the small table where Marcus's envelope lay. She took a deep breath, her hand hovering over it. There was no turning back now. She was going to make the decision that could change everything. In the quiet of the night, Lisa made a choice that she knew would shape her future. She picked up the envelope, tore it open, and read the letter inside once more. It wasn't just a promise of financial freedom. It was a challenge, a calling to become something more than she had ever thought possible. With one last look at Mariah, Lisa whispered to herself, I can do this. And for the first time, in a long time, she believed it. The morning after her late-night decision felt surreal to Lisa. The sun had risen in a soft haze, casting long beams of light through the thin curtains, but she couldn't focus on the warmth it brought. Her hand still shook slightly as she sat at the kitchen table, the weight of the envelope still heavy in her lap. She had made the decision to trust Marcus, to take the risk of letting him erase her debt, to accept that help without fully understanding his motives. It wasn't an easy decision, but something inside her told her that this was the chance she'd been waiting for. She didn't know how Marcus had known about her situation, but she didn't care anymore. All that mattered was that she had a chance, a real chance to change things for herself and for Mariah. But as she sat there, looking out the window at the quiet street below, the nagging question at the back of her mind wouldn't go away. Was she truly ready for what this could mean? The sound of Maria waking up from her nap brought her back to the present. Lisa took a deep breath and pushed those thoughts aside. She couldn't afford to waste time. She had to act now. The future was waiting for her, and for the first time in a long time, it seemed possible that she could change the course of her life. She stood up, walked into Mariah's room, and opened the door. The sight of her little girl smiling as she sat up in her crib made Lisa's heart swell. Mariah's innocence, her laughter, her bright eyes full of wonder, those were the things that kept Lisa going, even when everything felt impossible. Hey, little one, Lisa whispered softly as she picked her daughter up, holding her close. You've got a big future ahead of you, and I'm going to make sure it's a good one. The weight of that promise hung in the air between them, and Lisa held Mariah a little tighter. For all the challenges she had faced, Lisa knew this one thing. She would never stop fighting for her daughter. Today, she would begin the fight of a lifetime, not just for Mariah, but for herself too. Lisa sat down on the couch with Mariah on her lap, turning her attention back to the envelope in her hands. It was time to make the call. She didn't have to wait any longer. With a deep breath, she dialed the number Marcus had left for her. The phone rang twice before it picked up. Hello, Lisa. Marcus's voice came through the line, calm and steady as it had been when they first spoke. I'm glad you called. Lisa's heart beat faster. She hadn't expected him to answer so quickly, but there was something reassuring in his tone that made her feel as if everything was falling into place. I've made my decision," she said, trying to steady her voice. "I want to accept your offer. I want you to help me. But I need to know what happens next. What do I do now?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, as though Marcus was weighing her words carefully. Finally, he spoke. "I'm glad to hear that, Lisa. What I'm offering you isn't just financial assistance. It's a chance to break free from the weight you've been carrying. I'll take care of everything. Your debts, your bills, the eviction notice. You won't need to worry about any of that anymore. You'll have the freedom to focus on what truly matters, your future and your daughter's future." Lisa felt a wave of relief wash over her as Marcus's words sank in. For the first time in a long time, she could breathe easier. This wasn't a fantasy. This wasn't just a dream. This was real. But there was still one thing that nagged at her. "You said there was one condition," Lisa said, her voice trembling with both excitement and uncertainty. "What is it exactly? I need to understand." "You've already heard the request, Lisa," Marcus replied, his tone patient. "I want you to pay it forward when you're able. When your situation stabilizes, I want you to help someone else in need. It doesn't have to be big. Just a simple act of kindness. Help someone who's where you've been. When you're able, pass it on. That's all I ask." Lisa was quiet for a moment, processing his words. It sounded so simple, yet she knew it would carry a profound impact. The idea of helping someone else, of giving back, was something she had never considered before. She had always been the one asking for help, never the one offering it. "Okay," she said finally, her voice steady. "I can do that. I'll do what I can when I'm able." "Good," Marcus said, the warmth in his voice clear. "I believe in you, Lisa, and I'm here if you need anything. You're not alone in this." The phone call ended, but Lisa didn't hang up immediately. She sat there, staring at the receiver in her hand, as though she could still hear his words echoing in her mind. The finality of her decision settled in her chest, but so did a new sense of hope. She had done it. She had taken the first step toward the future she had longed for, and now there was no turning back. Lisa looked at Mariah, who was happily playing with a toy in her lap. The little girl's innocent laughter filled the room, and Lisa felt her heart swell with love. This was why she had done it. For Mariah, for their future. Over the next few days, things moved quickly. Marcus's team took care of the paperwork, the bills, and the legalities. Within a week, Lisa's debts were wiped away. The eviction notice vanished, and for the first time in months, she felt a sense of security. She could finally breathe again. But the most surprising part wasn't the financial relief. It wasn't the weight being lifted from her shoulders. It was the feeling of empowerment that followed. She had done something for herself. She had made a choice that would change the course of her life. But now came the hard part. What would she do with this newfound freedom? What could she do to honor the promise she had made to Marcus? How could she pay it forward? Lisa didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew she needed to take action. It wasn't enough to simply accept Marcus's help. She had to make it count. She needed to find someone who needed her help, someone who was struggling the way she had, someone who might just need that one act of kindness to get back on their feet. She started small, volunteering at a local shelter for single mothers. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She spent her mornings helping other women who were going through similar struggles, offering a listening ear, and sharing her story when she felt it might make a difference. It wasn't about giving money or material things. It was about giving her time, her empathy, and her experience. And in doing so, she realized that Marcus had been right. Helping someone else wasn't just about them. It was about her too. It was a reminder that she wasn't just a survivor. She was a person who had the power to make a difference. Days turned into weeks, and Lisa's life slowly began to take shape. She found a job at a local community center, working with other women to help them find their footing. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt meaningful. For the first time in her life, Lisa felt like she was contributing to something bigger than herself. And then one day, as she was walking home from work, she saw a familiar face standing on the corner of the street, a woman she had met at the shelter. The woman was holding a sign, asking for help. Lisa stopped in her tracks. She had a choice to make. She could keep walking, go home to her comfortable apartment, and forget about the woman's plight. Or she could step forward and offer the kind of help that Marcus had given her. Without hesitation, Lisa walked up to the woman, offering her a warm smile. "I don't have much," Lisa said, "but I can buy you lunch and talk for a bit. I've been where you are. Let me help." And in that moment, Lisa realized that the promise she had made to Marcus wasn't just a formality. It was a reminder that kindness had the power to change everything. Lisa woke up to the sound of Mariah's laughter. The early morning sunlight poured through the window, casting golden light across the room as her daughter bounced in her crib, eager to start the day. It had been months since Marcus had first offered his help, and the changes in Lisa's life were nothing short of profound. She had gone from a woman trapped by her circumstances, weighed down by debt and uncertainty, to someone who was now not only surviving but thriving. She no longer lived in fear of eviction, of utility bills piling up, or of wondering where her next meal would come from. Her debts were paid, her life was stable, and most importantly, she had a sense of purpose that had been missing for far too long. As she stood in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for herself and Mariah, Lisa reflected on how quickly things had changed. Just a few months ago, she couldn't imagine this kind of peace, this kind of stability. But now, it was her reality. And with that reality came a new sense of responsibility. She had made a promise to Marcus. Once her life was back on track, she would pay it forward. But she hadn't expected it to feel so natural. The more she gave of herself, the more she realized that the act of helping others was filling the spaces in her heart that she didn't even know were empty. It wasn't just about giving money or charity. It was about connection. It was about sharing her story, offering her time, and showing people that there was hope even when things seemed impossible. Maria's laughter interrupted Lisa's thoughts. She smiled as she scooped her daughter up into her arms, brushing the hair out of her face. "Ready to eat, baby girl?" she asked, kissing the top of her head. Maria giggled, her tiny hands reaching for her mother's face, and Lisa felt the familiar warmth of love fill her chest. She was grateful. Grateful for the gift of this new life, for the chance to rebuild, for the opportunity to be the kind of mother she had always wanted to be. After breakfast, Lisa walked Mariah to the local community center, where she had been working for the past few weeks. It was a small but thriving organization that helped single mothers and women facing financial hardships. The work was difficult, but Lisa found it fulfilling. Every day, she saw women who were struggling just like she had been. Women who had lost hope or who were barely holding on to their dignity. And just like her, they were seeking a way out. But unlike the women she worked with in the past, Lisa now had a sense of security. She wasn't just offering advice from a place of sympathy. She was offering hope from a place of experience. She could tell them that there was a way forward, that things could get better. And she wasn't just talking out of her head. She had lived it. That morning, as Lisa entered the community center, she noticed a familiar face sitting in one of the chairs in the waiting room. It was Vanessa, a young woman who had been coming to the center for the past few weeks. Lisa had met her during one of the center's support groups, and she could immediately see that Vanessa was struggling. Her eyes were tired, her face pale, and there was an unmistakable sadness in her posture. Lisa walked over and sat beside her, offering a soft smile. "Hey, Vanessa. How are you today?" Vanessa looked up, startled for a moment, as if she hadn't expected anyone to speak to her. She wiped her eyes quickly, as though trying to hide the tears that were just beneath the surface. "I'm okay, I guess," she said softly. "Just, everything feels like it's falling apart. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending that it's all going to be okay." Lisa's heart went out to her. She remembered what it felt like to sit in a room full of people, all of them offering their sympathy, but feeling so isolated in her struggle. It was as though no one could truly understand how deep the pain ran, how every failure felt like it was tied to her worth as a mother, as a person. "Vanessa, I know things feel tough right now, but I want you to know that there is hope," Lisa said, her voice steady and filled with conviction. "I know it might not feel like it, but I've been where you are. I've been at the bottom, with no way out. And now I'm standing here, talking to you. Things change, even when it feels like they won't. I promise you, things can get better." Vanessa stared at her, her eyes filled with disbelief. "You really think so?" she asked, her voice cracking. "I don't know. It just feels like nothing ever goes right." Lisa nodded, understanding the weight of her words. She knew that it was hard to believe in something better when the darkness of despair clouded everything. But she also knew that hope was contagious, and sometimes all it took was one person to believe in you when you couldn't believe in yourself. "I know it's hard to believe right now," Lisa said, reaching out to gently squeeze Vanessa's hand. "But I'm proof that things can change. You have to take it one step at a time. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. And I'll be here, every step of the way." For the first time in what seemed like forever, Vanessa's face softened. There was a flicker of hope in her eyes, a tiny spark that had been extinguished for so long. "Thank you," Vanessa whispered, her voice full of gratitude. "I don't know if I can ever repay you for what you're doing for me, but I'll try." Lisa smiled. "You don't have to repay me. Just promise me one thing. When you're able, you'll help someone else. You'll be that person who gives hope, just like I'm trying to give you." Vanessa nodded slowly. "I promise." Later that day, as Lisa walked home, her heart swelled with pride. She had kept her promise to Marcus, not just by helping Vanessa, but by becoming the kind of person she had always wanted to be. A person who could share her story, offer her time, and make a real difference in someone else's life. She had become a ripple in a much bigger wave of change, and it felt incredible. But Lisa wasn't done yet. There were more women who needed her, more people who were struggling just like she had. The idea of paying it forward had become more than just a promise. It had become a way of life. As the weeks passed, Lisa found herself connecting with more and more women. She had started a mentorship program at the community center, where she helped others work through their struggles. She offered job assistance, budgeting tips, and most importantly, emotional support. It wasn't always easy, and there were days when she felt overwhelmed, but she knew that this was where she was meant to be. She wasn't just giving back. She was helping to create a network of women who supported each other, a community that lifted each other up. One day, as she sat in her office at the community center, she received a phone call from Marcus. "I wanted to check in with you, Lisa," he said, his voice warm. "How are things going?" Lisa smiled as she picked up the phone. "They're going great. Better than I could have ever imagined, honestly." "I'm glad to hear that," Marcus replied. "You've done more than just accept help, Lisa. You've become an inspiration to so many others. I'm proud of you." The words hit her with more emotion than she expected. It had been so easy to think of herself as someone who needed saving, someone who wasn't capable of changing the world. But in the course of just a few months, she had transformed, not just her own life, but the lives of others. And that feeling, that sense of purpose, was something she could never have predicted. "Thank you, Marcus," Lisa said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me." "You've done the work, Lisa," Marcus replied. "I just gave you a push. But it's all you from here. Keep going." As she hung up the phone, Lisa sat back in her chair, letting the weight of those words settle in. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And now she was part of a movement of women helping each other, sharing their stories, and changing their lives together. She looked out the window, the sun setting behind the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city. It was a new chapter, a chapter where she had the power to make a difference, not just for herself, but for everyone around her. Lisa sat in the quiet of her apartment, the hum of the city outside blending with the soft sound of her daughter's lullaby. Maria was in her room, tucked in tight after a long day of play and laughter. The apartment, once a place of tension and uncertainty, now felt like a sanctuary. The weight of the world had been lifted from her shoulders, but it wasn't just the absence of debt or eviction notices that brought her peace. It was the sense of fulfillment that came with her promise to Marcus. She had done what she said she would do. She had paid it forward. And that, more than anything else, gave her a profound sense of purpose. Over the past few months, Lisa had helped countless women in the community, single mothers, women who had lost their jobs, and others who were drowning in debt, just as she had been. The community center had become a place of refuge, a space where women could find not just support, but hope. And Lisa was at the heart of it, a beacon of light in a world that so often seemed dim. It had started with a simple decision: to accept Marcus's offer. In doing so, she had unlocked a door to a new world, one where she could help others in ways she had never imagined. But the impact went beyond what she had expected. As she helped others, Lisa discovered parts of herself that had been buried for so long: compassion, strength, and a sense of purpose that filled the gaps in her life she didn't even know existed. The truth was, Lisa had never really believed in her own worth. She had been a woman who always felt like she was barely hanging on, someone who wasn't deserving of much more than what life had thrown at her. But now, every woman she helped, every story she listened to, and every life she touched reminded her of something powerful. She mattered. And the journey she had taken wasn't just about getting out of debt or overcoming hardship. It was about discovering her own resilience. One evening, after finishing her shift at the community center, Lisa walked home under the dim streetlights. The air was cool, and the stars above seemed to twinkle in a way that reminded her of the beauty she had once overlooked. As she walked, she thought about how far she had come, from the woman sitting in her kitchen, drowning in bills, to the woman who was now helping others rise above their own struggles. But her journey wasn't over. Lisa still had dreams of her own, dreams she had set aside for so long while trying to survive. She had always wanted to go back to school, to finish her degree, to create a future where she wasn't just getting by, but thriving. Now, with her finances in order and a steady job, she could finally start thinking about the next chapter in her life. Lisa arrived at her apartment and opened the door to find Maria sitting on the couch, waiting for her. Her daughter's face lit up as soon as she saw her mother, and the sight made Lisa's heart swell. "Mommy," Maria shouted, running over to her. Lisa scooped her daughter up, laughing as Maria's tiny arms wrapped around her neck. "I missed you, little one." "I missed you too, Mommy," Maria said, snuggling her head into her mother's shoulder. Lisa kissed the top of her head, feeling the deep love that only a mother could know. She had fought for this moment: the peace, the stability, the chance to be the kind of mother Maria deserved. And now, she was living it. As she sat down on the couch with Maria in her lap, Lisa reflected on how much had changed since that rainy night when Marcus had first knocked on her door. It was hard to believe it had only been a few months. The road had been long, filled with challenges and moments of doubt, but every step had brought her closer to the person she was meant to be. But even as she embraced the joy of her newfound life, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that there was more she was meant to do. Helping others at the community center was fulfilling, but she knew that her story, her transformation, had the potential to reach even more people. She wanted to share her experience, to show others that change was possible, that no matter how far you had fallen, you could rise again. That's when the idea hit her. She could write a book, a story of her journey, of how she had gone from being a woman at rock bottom to someone who now helped others find hope. She knew it wasn't going to be easy. Writing a book was a huge task, one that would require time, effort, and vulnerability. But Lisa was no stranger to hard work, and this felt like the next step in her journey. The thought of sharing her story with the world filled her with both excitement and fear. What if no one wanted to read it? What if her story wasn't worth telling? But then she remembered the women she had met, the ones who had looked to her for hope. If her story could inspire just one person, it would be worth it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of late nights, early mornings, and moments of self-doubt. Lisa poured her heart into the pages, recounting the darkest moments of her life and the moments of light that followed. She wrote about the fear she had felt when she first received that eviction notice, the loneliness that came with being a single mother, and the overwhelming sense of helplessness that had once consumed her. But she also wrote about the power of kindness, the impact of one person's belief in her, and the strength she had discovered within herself. As she wrote, Lisa found herself reliving parts of her journey, parts that still brought tears to her eyes. But each word, each page, was a step closer to something she had always wanted to do, to share her story and give others the same hope that she had received. When the book was finished, Lisa didn't know what to expect. She had no connections in the publishing world, no experience with writing, and no platform to speak of. But she was determined. She sent the manuscript to publishers and agents, hoping that someone somewhere would see the value in her story. And then, after what felt like an eternity of waiting, the call came. A small publishing house had accepted her manuscript. They wanted to turn her story into a book. Lisa could hardly believe it. Her story, the one she had lived through and fought for, was going to be shared with the world. It was a dream come true, a validation of everything she had worked for. But more than that, it was a testament to her growth, to the woman she had become. She was no longer just surviving. She was thriving. She was now in a position to inspire others, to show them that it was possible to rise from the ashes and build a new life. When the book was published, Lisa's life changed in ways she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just the financial success of the book. It was the messages she received from readers. Letters, emails, and social media messages flooded in from women who had read her story and found hope in it. Some were in similar situations, struggling with debt, single motherhood, or loss, and others were just looking for a way to inspire change in their own lives. Lisa became a symbol of resilience, proof that anyone could turn their life around if they were willing to put in the effort. The messages touched her deeply, but none more than the one she received from Vanessa, the woman she had first helped at the community center. Vanessa had gotten a job, secured housing, and was working on her own story of transformation. She wrote to Lisa, thanking her for showing her that there was hope, for being the light when everything felt dark. Lisa's heart swelled as she read the message. This was why she had written the book. This was why she had chosen to help others, to be the spark that ignited change in someone else's life. She wasn't just telling her story for the sake of recognition. She was telling it to give others the courage to share their own, to take that first step toward healing and hope. As she looked out the window, the sun setting on another day, Lisa felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had kept her promise to Marcus, and in doing so, had found a new purpose in life. She had gone from being a woman who felt powerless to someone who now empowered others. And as she held Mariah close that night, she knew that this was just the beginning. There was still more to do, more lives to touch, and more stories to tell. Lisa had fulfilled her promise, but she had also discovered something far more important: the power of transformation. And that power, she knew, would continue to ripple outward, touching the lives of those who needed it most. Lisa stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her blouse. The reflection staring back at her seemed unfamiliar, but in a way that felt good, like someone who had learned to accept herself for the first time. Her hair, once unkempt and tossed aside in the chaos of her life, now fell in smooth waves, and her posture was taller, more assured. It wasn't just the physical transformation. It was the inner growth that had made her feel whole. The room behind her was calm. Maria was playing on the floor with her favorite toys, her laughter filling the air. It had become a sound Lisa cherished, knowing how close they had come to losing it all. In just a few months, she had gone from being a woman who doubted her future to a woman who had not only rebuilt her own life, but was actively making a difference in others' lives. It had all started with a knock on the door. Marcus had come into her life like a stranger offering a lifeline. His promise to erase her debt was just the beginning of the ripple effect that would change her life, and the lives of countless others. Now, here she was, on the verge of something new again, a speaking engagement at the community center, where her journey had begun. The people who had been there for her, the women who had once sat in the same chairs she had, were now going to hear her speak about her transformation. It felt surreal, but it also felt like the natural next step in her journey. She took one last look in the mirror, brushing a stray hair behind her ear. She wasn't just going to talk about her story. She was going to give those women something more. Hope. The same hope that had carried her through the darkest days. The same hope that had allowed her to stand here today, ready to share her experience and inspire others to take their own first steps. As Lisa arrived at the community center, she felt a rush of emotion. The building had once felt so foreign to her, a place where she had gone to seek help, to find answers, to find a way out. But now, as she walked through those doors, it felt like home. The walls had witnessed so many stories, stories of pain, struggle, and resilience. And now, it would witness hers. The room was already filled with women. Some were sitting, their heads down, their faces worn from the weight of their struggles. Others were chatting quietly, trying to find a moment of peace before the session started. As Lisa stood in the doorway, she noticed the same sense of vulnerability she had once carried. It was a vulnerability she recognized, one she had lived with for years. But now, there was something different in the air. It wasn't just about hardship, it was about transformation. When the program coordinator, Kelly, saw Lisa, she waved her over with a warm smile. "You're up next, Lisa," she said, her voice encouraging. "You've got this." Lisa nodded, taking a deep breath. She felt a surge of nerves, but they weren't the paralyzing kind of nerves she had once known. These nerves were different, exciting, even. She was stepping into the light for the first time, and she knew it was the right moment. Kelly led her to the front of the room, where a small podium awaited her. Lisa stepped behind it, glancing out at the group of women sitting in front of her. Her heart raced, but she took another deep breath. She could do this. She had already survived the hardest part. Now, it was time to give back. She began speaking softly at first, her voice steady. "I'm Lisa," she started, "and not long ago, I was where you are. I know what it feels like to sit in this room, to be overwhelmed by everything you're facing, to feel like no one understands your pain. I've been there." Lisa paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle in the room. She could see the women leaning in, listening closely. It felt like a moment of connection, like they were all sharing something unspoken. "I was a single mom, struggling to keep a roof over my head, with bills piling up and no way out. I felt like I was failing, like everything I had worked for was slipping through my fingers. And for a long time, I didn't think I could ask for help. I was too proud, too afraid of being judged." A few heads nodded in understanding. Lisa could see their stories reflected in her own, their struggles mirrored in the pain she had lived through. But this wasn't just about the struggle. It was about what came after. But then something happened. Lisa continued, her voice gaining strength. "A man named Marcus came into my life. He didn't give me a handout. He didn't offer me a quick fix. What he gave me was something that changed everything. Belief. He believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Lisa paused again, her eyes scanning the room. She could feel the energy shift. The women were listening now, really listening, as if her words were slowly breaking through the walls they had built around themselves. That belief was the turning point. I went from feeling like I was drowning to realizing I had the power to rise. I didn't need to fix everything all at once. I just needed to take one step. And that step led me here, to this room, with all of you. It's not just about getting out of debt or fixing your circumstances. It's about seeing your own strength, your own worth, and knowing that you are capable of more than you think. As she spoke, Lisa could see the women starting to sit up straighter, their expressions softening, their eyes beginning to shine with the possibility of hope. She had been where they were. She had fought her way through the darkness, and now she was here to show them that they could do it too. I made a promise when I accepted help, to give back when I was able, Lisa said, her voice filled with emotion. And I've been doing that every day. But I'm not just helping others. I'm helping myself. Because every time I reach out, every time I show someone else that they matter, I'm reminded that I matter too. A silence fell over the room, but it wasn't heavy. It was a reflective silence, the kind that comes when something profound has been shared. I'm here today not just to tell you my story, but to tell you that your story isn't over. It's still being written. And every day is another chance to take that step forward, to build the life you deserve. For a moment, Lisa didn't say anything. She simply stood there, letting the words sink in. The room was still, and in that stillness, she could feel the power of what she had just shared. Her story wasn't just her own anymore. It was a shared story, a story of strength, resilience, and hope. And it was the kind of story that could change lives. As she looked out over the room, Lisa felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had come full circle, from the woman who was afraid to ask for help to the woman who was now standing in front of a group of women, offering that help in return. It was more than just a promise kept. It was a legacy of transformation. After her talk, women came up to her, some with tears in their eyes, others with quiet gratitude in their voices. One woman, a mother of 3, told Lisa that hearing her story had given her the courage to ask for the help she needed. Another woman, who had been struggling with a job loss, shared that Lisa's words had given her the strength to apply for new positions she had once felt unqualified for. In that moment, Lisa realized that the ripple effect was far greater than she had ever imagined. The hope she had offered others was now bouncing back to her in ways she couldn't have anticipated. She had made a difference, not just in her own life, but in the lives of those around her. As she packed up her things to leave, Kelly came up to her with a big smile. "That was incredible, Lisa. You have no idea how much your story means to these women. You've given them something they didn't have before. Hope. You've given them the belief that they can change their lives." Lisa smiled, her heart full. "I didn't do it alone," she said quietly. "I had a lot of help along the way." And she knew, as she walked out of the center that evening, that the journey wasn't over. There was still so much more to do, more lives to touch, more stories to share. But she had found her purpose, and that was worth everything.